Hello everybody, I'm Catriona Morten, I'm a sensory motor psychotherapist. Today what I'd like to talk about is how there is no hierarchy when it comes to trauma. There's no greater or less things that impact. When we're affected, then we're affected. But before I get into that, if you're enjoying these videos, then please give us a like and subscribe to our channel because it really helps us get our videos out there and help us help more of you. This is something that actually comes up a lot for people. I used to hear it when I ran the clinic, and I hear it from people every day that they should be able to get over what's happened to them because they know somebody that's had much worse trauma than they have. Or a lot of people that believe that they should be absolutely fine because nothing terrible has ever happened to me, but yet they have things that they find really difficult, things they can't cope with, things that they're really struggling with, and it just feels like life is a real battle for them. But they often don't really know why. And what I always say to people when they come and see me is I see more people with developmental trauma than the big T traumas, something really catastrophic happening. Developmental trauma, because it goes on for so long and it starts when we're so little, it has a massive impact on the way that we are, the way that we feel about ourselves, our ability to regulate, our ability to cope, our resilience. And because it's gone on for such a long time and we're so little and impressionable, then it really forms us as the person that we are. We believe that these things that have happened and these effects that we're carrying around with us are us. There's something wrong with us. And it's often only when we look back on what life was like growing up, the constant messages that people were given, how it made them feel, how it made them feel about themselves and the environment, other people. Those things are really profound, and the longer they go on, the more entrenched they get and the more difficult it can be to shift these things and to change them. I do see people that have had big traumas and they're very badly affected by them, and sometimes the trauma's been years ago and they've not been able to get over it. For some people, it's just a series of events that have just come one after another, beaten down our resilience and just made it impossible to cope. But the people that I tend to see are the ones that have had developmental trauma. And they often are the ones that will say, but I shouldn't need therapy, I should be fine. My friend, something awful has happened to her and she seems okay. And while that may be true, it doesn't take away from, if you're having struggles, if things are really impacting on you, if you're finding life difficult, if there's things that you just can't seem to shift and change, or patterns that just keep repeating themselves that are negative and unhealthy, then it's really worthwhile looking at those things. We all want to be the best version of ourselves, to live the best life that we can possibly live, without everything having to be a constant battle. And so I help people make sense of why they behave the way they are, why they are affected the way they are, how their body has absorbed all of these experiences and it just behaves in an unconscious way. When I'm working with people, when I'm talking to them, they will often do things, make movements with their body, with the way that they shift. It might be that the fearful place is always on one side that people pull away from. I help them understand that and notice it, bring it into the conscious, so that they can be aware of how they've been affected. How might that have been relevant when you were growing up? Either would it have been a good coping mechanism to have at the time, to always want to pull away and to shut down and to be very quiet? Or is that something that, they can really relate to past experiences? When that's the case, then we don't need to demonise those things. When we can make the unconscious conscious and be aware of what we're doing, then we can find resources to help us to feel a bit stronger, a bit more present, to be able to stay instead of shrinking away, or to be able to regulate our nervous system if we're getting very, very dysregulated. We talk about things and our chest goes really tight, and our throat tightens up, it's difficult to speak, or your stomach does flips when you think about something, or half of your body might go into a bit of a freeze and not be able to move freely. When we can notice all of those things and link those to past events, then those things are really relevant. And everybody's important, and everybody's way of coping and managing is different. Like I've said many times, you can have 4 people in a car accident. 3 of them will be absolutely fine. They'll get over it, they'll be shaken, but they'll get over it. The 4th one might have PTSD. The 4th one might have an absolute phobia and trauma about getting back into a car. And it's just because we're different. We've got different windows of tolerance, we've got different levels of resilience. That means that we can cope with things, get over things a bit better than others. Some things, when they happen to us, they'll have a bigger impact than they would, maybe because of some past wounds. Not major things, but things that have been relevant that just really impact. And it means that something that would not affect somebody affects someone else. And like I say, that's why there is no hierarchy of trauma. So don't avoid going to talk to someone, or, oh, I think we've got a little cat. Yes, we have, hello Percy. So there's no hierarchy. So if we feel like we need to speak to someone, we need to go into therapy, we need to work on some things, then don't dismiss it. I know a lot of people put off, oh, I can't, what would I say? There's nothing terrible that's ever happened to me. It doesn't matter. If you're struggling, then the life that you've lived has had an impact on you and meant that the life that you want to live moving forward just seems a little bit either undoable or difficult or more overwhelming than it needs to be. So if you do feel like you're struggling, don't compare yourself to other people. Find a therapist that you can talk to, or, a really good friend that you can open up to about it. But if you really need to make some fundamental changes to deal with the unconscious and some past experiences, you probably need to go and find a good therapist to help you do that. I meet an awful lot of people who will tell me that they've had a great childhood, absolutely brilliant. They had really loving parents, great siblings, lived in a nice place. It was great. When I ask them what they remember, what are their memories of growing up? How clear are their memories? Very often people will tell me, oh, I don't really remember. But I know it was good, but I don't really remember. They might remember little pockets of things, but I've come across people that have huge chunks of time missing, years, or they've got tiny little bits of memory and no context around them. That always sends out a little bit of an alarm bell with me. If it was really good, it was great, then we should be able to remember those things. We should have childhood memories. And often people will tell me that a member of their family or someone will say, oh, do you remember this? It's like, no, I don't remember that. And while we can't remember everything, we should have a bit of a narrative of what it was like growing up, being able to picture things, remember things. If we haven't, then that means that there's been a reason that we've had to block those things out. Our brain is brilliant at just putting those things into a little compartment, putting a lid on them, closing the door on them, and they're not accessible. Unfortunately, sometimes events happen in life that pokes those things and suddenly they're accessible. We might not have a memory of them, but we'll have a body memory of them. And so we'll feel very, very affected by things. And that can be really confusing. People will really tend to minimise that. It's like, but there's no reason for this. I was fine up until now, or there's nothing bad has happened to me, so why do I feel like this? Why am I now starting to have panic attacks, or a lot more social anxiety than normal, or start to freeze, dissociate? It's like, I've never done those things before. Something's been poked in the past. And like I've said in other videos, none of us know what's trapped in our amygdala, what's just sealed up in there. They might always stay sealed, but often there's something that can just give a bit of a poke. That's another thing about trauma, and why there's no hierarchy. There's no kind of levelling out of this. Everybody can be affected by trauma. Absolutely everybody. It just depends on how resilient you are at the time, if you've been ill, if you've had one knock too many, or what your attachment style is. If we have a secure attachment, then we do have more resilience. We have a wider window. We know how to regulate ourselves more. All of those things are a factor in how badly we're affected by things and how those affects play out in our everyday life. Or they might only show up when we get into relationships or in certain circumstances. But if we've got those wounds, they will show up one way or another. So I hope if any of this resonates with you, then it will help you realise that your trauma, your life experiences are just as important as everybody else's. That we mustn't compare, but just look at ourselves and say, is this the best I can be? Is life as easy as it should be? Are there things that are really getting in the way, that are blocking me from doing things, from fear or a sense of overwhelm? If so, talk to a therapist. You'll find that you'll be hopefully met with a really friendly, kind, understanding ear and someone that can really help you make sense of why things are the way they are and what's needed in order to improve them, heal them, give ourselves more capacity and just make our lives better. So if you've enjoyed this video, then give us a like and subscribe to our channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye!